Hello, Shemai, and welcome back if you're still watching. If you are still watching, I've got a real treat for you today. I'm going to show you how to make hot cross buns, an essential this weekend, I think. In fact, I think I like buns more than I like Easter egg chocolate. Yeah, I do. I like buns more than chocolate. Anyway, I'm going to have to level with you here. Two things. One, they do take a while to make, and secondly, they do require a little bit of elbow grease as well. But seeing as we're all stuck at home this Easter weekend, what else are you going to do? So, the version I'm going to show you how to make is a wholemeal version of a regular hot cross bun. Mainly because I know a lot of you people are still having trouble finding strong white bread flour in the supermarkets, you know, panic buying and all that jazz. But anyway, this recipe uses just a small portion of strong white flour, which is then topped up with a lot of wholemeal flour. Now, the resulting bun is still excellent. It's still bready, it's still light, it's still fruited, and like most foods and most things in life, it's only improved when you slice it, chuck it in the toaster, and slather it in butter. So, for the buns themselves, we've got 300 millilitres of milk, 75 grams of soft light brown sugar, 45 grams of unsalted butter, 7 grams of yeast, 5 grams of salt, 3 teaspoons of mixed spice, 150 grams of strong white flour, and 350 grams of that wholemeal flour. To fill it, in this bowl I've got 250 grams of mixed dried fruit, which I'm going to actually soak in about 100 millilitres of boiling hot water, just to get that fruit to plump up and get really juicy before we use them. To make the crosses to go on top of the buns, over here I've got 75 grams each of plain flour and just some tepid water. I'm going to combine all of my dry ingredients here in this bowl. I'm just going to tip in my spices. I'm going to pop my salt onto one side of the bowl, and I'm going to put my yeast on the other side. I'm just going to add the sugar into the bowl. I'm going to take my milk and I'm going to add my butter into the jug, and I'm going to pop this in the microwave. The butter is all melted, and if I pop my finger in there, the mixture isn't too hot, it's just lukewarm, which is exactly what we're looking for. Now I'm going to add my egg. Now I'm just going to make a well. I'm going to add in just about half of the wet mixture for now. Now I'm just going to add in the rest. Now that that's all mixed together, I'm going to tip it out onto my work surface. We're going to knead it for about 10 minutes until it starts to firm up and starts to get nice and stretchy. What was once a sticky mess has now formed into a nice, soft, malleable dough. You can see all of these lovely stretchy bits inside the dough. This is all of the gluten that we've just worked up in that dough. So that tells us that our dough is ready. Pop that back into our bowl. Now I'm going to cover this bowl with cling film, and we're going to leave our dough in a not too cold, not too warm place. For me, that's the windowsill in my house. And we're going to cover it up, leave it there for about an hour. Whilst our dough is rising, I'm just going to take our dried fruit and I'm going to cover them in about 100 ml, or just enough so that it covers all of the fruit in whatever size bowl you're using. I'm just going to leave that then until the dough is finished rising. So my dough has risen and it is now ready to use. It did take a little bit longer than an hour, about an hour and a half in my kitchen this morning because it was very cold, which does slow the whole process down. But as you can see, she's reaching the top of the bowl and she is definitely ballooned and doubled in size, which is perfect. Now, one little tip for you though, if you're not certain and you want to test it, if you get a bag of flour, just dip your finger in it so it's lightly coated and just gently press into your dough. Now, when you press into it and you take your finger away, the dough inflates back completely, then it's not ready. If it inflates just halfway and it springs back to fill in a little bit of that mark that you left, that means your dough is perfect and she's ready to use. Okay, so the camera cut out a little bit on me there, but all I've done is I've strained that fruit that we were soaking whilst our dough was rising, and I've added it into the dough and just kneaded it through just to make sure that it's all the way throughout our dough. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to shape these into our 12 little buns. So, to start off, I'm just going to take our dough and I'm going to roll it into a nice long sausage shape. Now, at this point, you can either take a dough scraper, or if you haven't got a dough scraper, just use a sharp knife at this point. And all I'm going to do is, firstly, I'm going to cut that in half. Then with each half, I'm going to cut into 3 sort of equal sized sections. This isn't bake off, don't worry too much about accuracy. And with each of these littler pieces, I'm just going to cut them in half and repeat that with the other half of dough as well. Now here's a little tip on shaping your buns. So I'm going to take my dough and I'm just going to use the palm of my hand to flatten out that piece of dough. Don't use any extra flour at this point. Now, with my flattened out dough, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each side, so we got top, bottom, left and right. With each side, I'm going to bring it into the middle of that dough and I'm going to use my finger to just push it in like that. I'm going to repeat it with that side, with the top, press, and lastly with the bottom, fold it into the middle and press it in. Then we're just going to flip our bun over so that all of those seals are on the underneath of it. Pop them in the middle, and I'm going to take my hand and make it into a caged shape. So my fingers are spread like this. I'm going to pop that on top of my bun, press my hand down, keeping my hand in this caged sort of shape. I'm going to roll the bun on the work surface, again with no additional flour, so it's a little bit sticky, but that's what we want. And just roll. And that should give us a very nice taut bun. So we've shaped all of our buns, placed them onto some parchment paper on a baking tray, and as you can see I've spaced them apart so that they've got enough room for each one to grow and prove, but not so far apart that they might not stick together, because if they do, that's fine, because it'll make piping the crosses on them just that little bit easier later. So now that they're shaped, I've got another little tip for you. Full of them, I know. But when I prove my buns, or any sort of sweet dough, anything like that, some people cover them in cling film or in, say, a damp tea towel. Here's my little trick. The Humble Bag for Life does a great job for proving buns, and it's just the right size to fit a whole baking tray inside it as well. So with the edges, I'm just gonna tuck them underneath the baking tray so that it holds it shut, so to speak, still giving them enough room to breathe and enough room to proof. Now I'm gonna leave them looking silly like this, covered in their bag for life, for about 45 minutes, maybe an hour. My kitchen has warmed up a bit now. And whilst our buns are proving, we're gonna make the paste that's gonna make the crosses on top of our buns. So here I've got my 75 grams of plain flour, which I'm just gonna tip into my jug. Make sure there's no lumps. And then I've got an equal part of water. Dropping consistency. That's exactly what we're after. Okay, this is a true insider tip from the Marmalade Teapot, from me to you, because I absolutely hate filling piping bags. All you'll need is your piping bag as usual, and a piece of tape. Yes, this is duct tape. Now I'm going to take my tape, and I'm going to plop it just onto the top of my piping bag, like this, on the inside. Now the bit that I've left overhanging, I'm actually going to stick this to the edge of my worktop. I might zoom you in for this, but whilst it's open like that, I'm actually going to put my jug on the edge of the worktop. This is even lazier than you can imagine, right? And then I'm just going to scrape that into my piping bag. My buns have proved, they've had an hour, they've puffed up lovely. They're ready for the oven. They're just missing one key thing at this point. They're crosses. They're going to go in now at 190 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes until they turn a lovely, lovely golden colour. Whilst the buns are in the oven, I'm just going to heat the apricot jam, ready to glaze them when they come out. Now these have just come out of the oven and they're ready to glaze. I've warmed my apricot jam. I'm just going to brush that straight onto the nice hot buns.